Welcome, everyone. I'm Johanna Desta, a writer and filmmaker here in New York City. Today, I'm with Backstage speaking to the cast of Nickel Boys, including Aunjanue Ellis Taylor, Ethan Harisi, Brandon Wilson, Hamish Linklater, and Luke Tenney. I have so many questions for you guys, obviously, about craft of acting, especially for the Backstage audience, but I do want to ask, this film has been on such a journey for the last few months. It has screened at so many festivals. There have been so many special screenings. There have been award ceremonies, endless Q&As. I'm really curious for everyone what your favorite screening experience or what your favorite moment has been in sharing this film with audiences all around the nation. Maybe we can start with you, Aunjanue.
My favorite thing, I wouldn't say necessarily moment, but my favorite my favorite part of this is getting to be and hang out with these young men that I didn't get to meet pretty much at all or hang out with at all when I was with these men, sorry, not young men, men that I hung out with now, and listening to them and, knowing who they are, discovering how brilliant they are, on and off camera, has been really joyful for me. Every time we do a Q&A, they make me think about things associated with the film and just in life and art, in a different way. Brandon and Ethan.
Ethan, how about you? What's been your favorite moment or screening?
I'll go with favorite screening, and I think that was New York Film Festival. That was really, we sat in with the audience that time, and I think that was my second time watching with an audience, and they were all really engaged. It was, I think, the first screening where I got to hear the audience audibly react to certain things that happened throughout the movie. And yeah, that kind of elevated the experience in a way. And then we were all on the balcony for the montage at the end. Aunjanue accidentally walked in while the movie was still playing when she did not mean to. But we got to that moment where Fred, lifts up the gun and the entire theater gasped. And that was the first time that we had, seen or heard something like that. And it was just a really, really crazy feeling.
Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah.
Brandon, how about for you?
I like Telluride.
That was the first one, right?
Yeah, that was the first one. For many reasons, with the trees and the mountains and the air. Yeah, it was good. It was refreshing. Maybe because I'm tired right now. I'm remembering Telluride with such a freshness.
It's all coming back to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Luke, how about yourself?
For me, we were blessed enough to have a private screening with me and my wife, and it was the first time I'd seen it. And my wife did not grow up in the States. She grew up in Mexico. So she really didn't have any sort of perspective on the African-American experience, except for what I told her in some of the movies that we had shared over the years. And when she saw Nickel Boys, the first thing she did was immediately she praised Jomo, who's our cinematographer. It was the first thing out of her mouth. Oh my God, incredible. But the second thing was how she praised just the entire ensemble, including Ramel. And I hold her opinion in high regard. So for her to just gush about these people who I spent 2.5 months with making this thing, I was humbled because, my wife as an artist inspires me, and her words, again, I hold in such high regard. And it made me feel like if I wasn't in it, she would think it's great. I really got a true sense that I was a part of this thing that was so much bigger than me. And it's an honor to feel that sensation. Oh, this person would think this is a good movie, even if I wasn't in it. They would just, that's good. Which again, made me feel like a grateful cog in the machine. But we had a long car ride home. She politely let me know, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to watch that movie again. I said, I understand, but she was like, I'm really grateful for it. And she was like, congrats, man. And I was like, oh, wow, thank you. So I have a lot of fond memories of that. And it's a great film. And it was really cool to sit with one of my favorite artists and pick a brain about it.
Gosh, that's so gorgeous. The bar that you just set for any husband who's going to be watching this, any partner. That's really beautiful the way that you spoke about your wife. But I love
she's a special lady. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hamish, how about you?
I'm going to sort of piggyback on what Luke just said. I saw at a private screening with Ethan, and I brought my 17-year-old daughter, and she's one of my favorite artists. And it was really just like so amazing experiencing it for the first time, being by her, experiencing it for the first time. And she's coming tonight to the premiere. She's coming back a second time. I mean, she's just like, Dad, that's the best thing you've ever been in.
High praise. That's high praise. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you all for sharing that with me. And I was curious about the experience of sharing this film with people who are close to you. So thanks for kind of getting into that with the question as well. But yeah, something that I'm so curious about, obviously I want to take it back to the beginning, take it back to the origin, the script. So many people have talked about the first person experimental nature of this film. And I know that some of you have said, it said POV in the script, but you didn't quite realize what that really, really meant until you got to set. Ethan, I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, reading the script and then realizing what Ramel really, really meant when it came to POV.
It was a little bit of not knowing what that really meant, and a little bit of choosing to ignore it. Because I didn't want it to distract me from understanding the story and connecting the story and understanding Elwood and connecting to Elwood. So I was like, okay, don't know what that's about, but we're gonna keep reading. And I'm glad that I did that, because it allowed me to move forward through the process without having to worry about this like extra thing, this unfamiliar thing that was present in the script. And yeah, after getting the role, it then became, okay, yeah, now I don't know what this means, but I think still not questioning it, and then eventually meeting Ramel and talking to him, and then not really talking about it, at least what it would look like. All of that was helpful for just arriving onto set and being prepared the best way I know how, and then trusting in him and in this entire process, and just finding a way to be open to whatever we were going to be doing on set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trust seems, I mean, it's a huge component of like working with any director, but huge for this too. Brandon, I'm curious, did you have a similar experience of maybe ignoring the POV aspect when you were reading the script, or did you approach it a different way when you saw that in the script?
No, it was a very similar experience. Yeah, I mean, I understood what it meant essentially, but I had no idea what it would look like when we got to set and what it would mean. Yeah, and very similarly to Ethan, kind of not really thinking about it at all. Just kind of leaving it open so I could just explore the things that I could explore in that moment, and then show up and trust.
I'm curious, Anjanou, I have loved hearing the way that you spoke about your relationship to the camera on this shoot. Talk to me a bit about when you realized on set, oh, this is what he meant by POV, and this is what this experience is going to be like. Was it day one that you realized his approach and what it was going to be?
Yeah, I didn't, I didn't understand or, grasp that from reading the script, but I chalk that up to bad reading on my part. So yeah, so my full understanding of what Ramel was doing was, essentially happened the first day that I worked. But I trusted him implicitly, like I didn't care what he was going to do. I knew that I would be safe. I knew that it would be exciting. It's like I knew I was going to go on a good date. You know what I'm saying? Like I knew I was going to have fun, whatever we did. So when I understood it, I just said, okay, this is what I knew would happen if I worked with the artist that I came to know was in the world when I saw Hale County.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you were a huge fan of Hale County to the point where like you reached out to him, you tried to get in touch with him just to let him know, I loved this movie. I love your expression as an artist. I feel seen by this. Mm-hmm. When was the first instant? I almost want to say you manifested it, but it's like you took the next step. You did try to reach out. When did the script first come to you, or like what was your first ever interaction with Ramel?
Yeah, I mean, they were just saying, it was very, conventional. Everything else was universal, but this was really conventional. My agents were saying that there was a possibility that this was going to happen, meaning the movie, and there's a possibility that there might be a role in it, that you would be, might be right for. And if there is, it's going to be small, but, and I was like, I don't care. Yeah.
Let me in. And it's a huge role too. It's like emotionally so dense. It's so the center of the story in so many different ways. It's just really impactful. And I want to like dig into that a little bit more later. But Luke and Hamish, I'm also curious for you that realization of the POV aspect of it. What was it like for you coming to set and realizing, maybe we can start with Luke, the cinematic approach to this story?
Well, look, I play a lot of video games. Video games is something I enjoy a great deal. My wife and I play together. I'm excited for my kid to grow up enough so we can play games together. So when I was reading the script, it was kind of easy for me to like imagine, with one exception. I'm reading the script. I was 100% immersed. It kind of felt like a dream was playing out in my head. And then I get to set and I realize, oh, I'm not Elwood. I'm not Turner. So it's not my POV anymore. Like after I've read the script, I am now like part of the environment and that's obvious, it's obvious when you think about it. But for me, it was like a rediscovery of the work because my first scene was actually with Hamish. And I remember we showed up and I just went, I don't see the camera. I'm usually concerned with like, oh, I want to make sure that everybody can see what it is that we're doing. We got to capture it so we can put it on the screen. And I was like, guess if Ramel needs me to do something different, he'll say it, but I trust that it's in the right spot. And then between action and cut, Hamish is an actor who's extremely warm and welcoming. And despite the nature of his character, I felt like I was in good hands just on day one doing that with him. So that really kind of set the tone for me. And the rest of the experience was just this wonderful collaboration that I think back on fondly quite often. So I think it's a high I'll be chasing for a while.
Mm. Could you speak to that as well? I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, like Anjanou, I hadn't read perhaps as carefully as I should, and was surprised on the first day when my coverage never happened. And it was like, wait, is the camera ever going to come out of that stall over there in the where the guys are hiding out? And then actually watching the movie for the first time, I was like, oh wow, what courage of his convictions he had. But it was also after shooting the first scene and knowing what the story was and loving the book so much and loving the end of the book so much, I was like, oh, right, he's a fucking genius because he's figured out a way to do the end of to make the end of this story inevitable. Because you've been teed up by these two boys having the POV swapping back and forth, so I mean it was like you would have the hair on the back of your neck stand on end over and over, like, oh shit, this is incredibly brilliant what you've been asked to participate in. And I think it's like the movie is like such an experience. Making the movie was such an experience too. Like it was such a surprise every day. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Chicken flesh. That's what my mom used to call it, chicken flesh. Here you get the goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what does that mean? I was so
Yeah.
confused.
It is like a goosebumps kind of thing.
Yeah. That's old Scottish people call goosebumps. They call it chicken flesh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, not to put everyone on the spot, I am curious if anyone had like a goosebump, hair-raising moment like that on set where you were like, this is a special day, or this is a little bit different than anything that I've done or have been used to.
I mean, like Hamish said, kind of every day, but one that stands out is the boxing scene when Luke calls out. I thought it was still the second. Every time I've seen it, every time I think of that moment, it's like, yeah, that one gets me.
Mm. How many times have you seen the film?
3.
Mm.
I just had this for the other night. I just saw the last 10 minutes of the screening, and no, I can't. Oh, okay. Yes, I can talk about it without blubbing. But when Brandon comes to Ingenue to the door, and Ingenue greets him, in my memory from seeing the movie the first time, a couple of months ago or whatever, that scene was about 15 minutes long, and it's so brief, but it like defies time because your heart goes like that, and everything stops every time it's Ingenue.
Same.
One for me was definitely, I actually went to the Astra Awards recently. A friend of mine presented, and there was a clip of Nickel Boy shown, and it was the hug clip between Brandon's character and Ingenue's character. And you could hear a pin drop. And it was so sweet and so loving. It was like all your senses participated. There's only 2 that you use when enjoying film. It's sight and hearing, but it was like everything else turned on. You could taste the air, the humidity. It was wild. That was actually the first time I had seen any of Nickel Boys in like a crowd. And it warped time. It was like we went near a black hole on some Interstellar. You're right, Hamish. I just remember that whole experience being like, wow, these people saw a minute of this movie, and it just completely, everyone was moved. And that moved me.
As soon as you said that scene, I just got like transported back to it, and I'm like looking at Ingenue in the scene, which there's so many things about the first person aspect of this film that are just like stick with you, and that is one of them. But Ingenue, yeah. I'm curious if you had a moment as well.
A chicken flesh moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think oddly, when we did our read-through, we did a Zoom because it was, still high COVID time. And I actually thought that Brandon was probably 5'1". And I was like, oh, look at the little boy. He's gonna have a nice little job. He's a child. I'm so excited for him. And then this dude shows up, and I'm like, who is this? Who is this? What? How did you grow in 2 months? But I think, to that end is I didn't get to play with Ethan in the way that I wanted to. I've done so with when they see us. So I wanted to do that again. But I didn't, the nature of the thing, I didn't get to do that. But I did get to do it a little bit with Brandon. And I just think just like the emotional, just the vulnerability that he, conveys, it's just so triggering for me, it's just a well that I, could reach into and pull from, even though I could not, look at him directly. And that certainly gave me some chicken flesh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you just reminded me of a question that I had too for Brandon and Ethan. I was reading another interview that you guys did where you talked about when you were looking into the lens, like looking at each other, you would try to almost see each other in the lens. I think Ethan, you were like, I was looking for Brandon in the lens. Could you guys talk a little bit more about that? Because it's so human, and I just want to know more about the way in which you were searching for each other in those moments.
I didn't get to share a chicken flush moment, and
Oh,
normally, I would have been like, "All right, cool, I got to skip, like I got to move on." But it's because these two moments are two of what I believe some of the best moments in the film, and so I just want to bring attention to them whenever I can. Uh, One, while working and while watching Chicken Flush moment was when Hattie visits Elwood at Nickel. Just that entire scene. Watching Ingenue tap into that and perform the way she did on set, and then seeing the results of that, just really unbelievable. And I mean, it's Ingenue Ellis Taylor. There's not much more I can say after that. And then another scene, that same thing, we got to watch it happen, and it had a really great impact while watching it in the movie, was the bar scene with David and Craig Tate. Yeah, watching Craig Tate show up to set that day and just disappear into that bar. And yeah, we could tell while watching it, like, oh, this is really good stuff. And then you watch the movie, and it's one of the the best scenes in the movie. So just wanted to bring attention to those moments.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. It was a good question, so I was like, I can't hide from this one. Yeah, about finding Brandon in the camera. I mean, the thing is, I didn't really know that that's what was happening until Brandon said it in an interview, or say he said it at some point along this journey. And it was a hindsight thing where I was like, oh, yeah, that is what was kind of happening. We had the opportunity to work with scenes beforehand and establish a connection with each other, and be able to look into each other's eyes and know what it would have felt like if we had done it traditionally. And that doing that just kind of informed what we would do when we would lose each other on lose each other's faces and eyes on set.
Brandon, was that a realization that you were having in the moment, or was it something that you realized later that made you say that?
Essentially, I mean, the first way you worded your question was kind of, there was a beauty to that I hadn't seen it in that way. You said that we were searching for each other in the camera, and it was definitely like a recognition when we were making it that we kind of got to a place where we could see each other in the camera, like, and ignore that, like, we were just talking to a camera, and feel like we were imbuing it with life. But yeah, that, I don't know, the way you worded that question kind of added a different level of longing, like that they were searching for each other in that, and there's something in there. Yeah.
I'm just going based off of like the beautiful way that you put it in that interview, because I thought it was such a nice sentiment too. And it's just so interesting to hear all of you, the way that you have talked about the experience of making this film, because it's very poetic and lyrical for the audience, but it is so interesting to hear about how it was poetic and lyrical for you, but also complex. You guys are also working with rigs, and you're acting with the DP, or you're acting with the camera operator. You're just doing lots of very different things. So I find that all interesting. But this is like for an actor centric audience. So I am curious, once you guys had the script, once you guys had the roles to yourselves, what is sort of maybe the work or the practice that you have for really getting into the sensory world of the character? Are you doing things like keeping a diary? Are you doing things like making a playlist of songs your character would like? Are you like finding a fragrance and like getting into the sensory world of your character in that way. I'm curious if there's anything that you guys did along those lines to really make the character your own. Maybe Luke, we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. For me, I've done one other adaptation, and it was from like a comic book. I treat my script like I try not to pull too much stuff from elsewhere. But what's dope about an adaptation is you can also go to the original. And I remember doing that and having so much more to pull from. So I stolen that mentality for Nickel Boys, and I have a very simple like initiation process where I just figure out everything said about my character, whether I say it, whether someone else says it. And in the novel, it was so specific, and it was equally just as specific in the script. But I had felt a little insecure because I was about to turn 30 and I was playing a high schooler, and I was like, how am I going to pull this off? And I read in the novel, and it said, this boy looked like a man. He looked like a grown man. I was like, oh, we good. It's fine. Like I literally am so blessed with a character perfect for me because I got a baby face and I'm tall. Like, let's go. So it eradicated my insecurity, and then I could focus purely on bringing this character to life. And I just ruminated on the text. Sometimes I have an impulse to keep a diary or create stuff. With this, it felt very sensitive. So I just ruminated again on the descriptions of Griff, both in the novel and in the text, and even in the action, because to me, that's what the screenwriter is saying about my character. So those all become very important to me. And then I just, from there, when you talk about the immersion, from my experience, and this rarely ever happens, but we were kind of there when we were shooting. There wasn't much set. It was more people decorated these buildings that were already there, wonderfully so. But it's very different than something like being on a soundstage. We were immersed, like out of the window, there's a courtyard, which looks like how the novel described the academy. It was such an honor to be a part of that, because that meant like I didn't have to imagine any of that. It was really there, and that's just a testament to our awesome location scouts, to the director, to Jomo. But beyond that, it wasn't just the environment. These wonderful, wonderful performers, and their just sensitive, committed performances make it so that you have no choice. I become so confident that I can no longer doubt myself when I'm surrounded by such committed work.
Yeah, I love the way you speak life into the people around you. Like, this is so inspiring. And then you also did tap into location. Yeah, which I was so curious about as well, like the sensory experience of being in the places that you were. Like,
yeah, it just looked like that. It was incredible. But yeah, the people around, yes, you've seen the movie. It's accurate. It's not even that much praise. It's just simple observation. They're exceptional.
A lot can be said, about Nora Mendes. You know what I mean? She was our production designer. So, a lot of thought and labor went into that. So, it wasn't incidental. It was a world that she created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did an amazing job. I was reading some interviews with her as well, and she's done so much amazing work, like so many things that I love she's been involved in. But yeah, I'm curious, Anjanou, was there any of that like sensory or like prep work that you do, or is that not really your process?
Well, a lot of my, I would say, focus is made real or made possible by music. I bathe in it. I bathe in it. It is my fortress. It is everything to me. It protects me. Because when the act of acting is ridiculous. It is absurd, because you are being asked to pretend like you're somebody else, to focus on the reality of the possibility of becoming or transforming into someone else, have an intimate experience in front of a machine with 100 people working around you. This is the reality is you are asked to do your job on a construction site. That's what you're doing, you know? So imagine there's like a lot of construction in Los Angeles. If I went in the middle of that construction site and was like, okay, now do the thing, you know? That's what acting is. Because people are labor to create or build a world around you. And so they're not concerned about being quiet. They got to put this hammer in this nail. You know what I mean? It is loud and impossible. So yeah, I use music as a tool, as my weapon against that. I think I want to say a little bit though. I've been reading a lot about other films that have been filmed with the, you know, POV intention. And I've been reading a lot about Lady in the Lake, which was one of those films that was shot in that way. And the critique of that film was that the actors, like when Robert Montgomery was a director, but when he happened to be on camera, the couple of times that he ended up being on camera, and then Audrey Tauter, who was the you know, the femme fatale in the movie, the critique is it felt really uncomfortable and kind of claustrophobic to watch because the actors never turned their gaze away from the lens, ever. So no matter what they were saying, everything was directed towards the lens. The little bit of that haven't seen the film in its entirety, but the little bit that I have seen, what I've seen is that, yeah, we'll engage the camera, but, you know, we'll also have an interior moment, you know? And I think that kind of sets it apart from this gimmicky idea of shooting a film in POV, right? Because if you're doing it and the camera's your accomplice in that, then your only message is to the camera. Like you have no interior life, right? And I think that's what Ramel and my you know, brilliant coworkers can speak to this more, but that's what Ramel was trying to, and I think he accomplished and succeeded. He was trying to upend that. What he was trying to do is give Black people interior lives, to not just be objects on screen, not to just be seen on camera, but to see. How does it look? How does the world look through a Black person's eyes? You know, and part of that in that seeing is not just seeing the thing, but how you feel about the thing. And the reason why that he did that, and I would love to hear Ethan talk about this more, and Brandon, is this was about this fucked up thing that happened to these children in Marianna, Florida. And it is, I'll just speak for myself. It was my job to speak for them. So, and I believe that Ramel felt in his way, I can't say it the way Ramel would say it, but in his way, he wanted to do that and felt that, okay, how do I do this effectively? And the way to do that is to really honor the POV of these children, what they saw and how they saw it. I just think it's important because sometimes people will be like, oh, it's a gimmick that we shot it in that way, particularly from an actor's point of view, you know, and that it's more than that we are the faces and the voices of children that were unheard.
Absolutely. I would love to hear Brandon and Ethan speak to that, and also encourage anyone who will be watching this later to go and read what Ramel has said about the process of filming it, because he also explains it so beautifully and elegantly, and it's worth further exploration. But yeah, maybe Ethan or Brandon, whoever would like to start, maybe responding to what Anjanou has said about the process of filming, or maybe how it's expanded your view as well of cinema too.
Oh, I see what we created, and it feels like a miracle. It feels like, which, while we're doing it, we're just working on this project that we all believe in. We're showing up to work and we're playing, we're exploring, and it's a joy. But to have such a unique experience watching a movie, yeah, my mind is completely kind of blown wide open. It's incredibly refreshing and exciting to see what direction, what can come from seeing a film like this and the existence of a film like this and what it does for pushing the medium forward. So I'm really excited about that. And speaking to what Anjanou said, I don't know. So really the intention when it came to doing all this, there was no feeling of the weight of the responsibility that that we were carrying into this project. That wasn't something that I felt during the process. And it was something I was most definitely aware of. I knew what we were walking into and the gravity of it. But Ramel, I forget how long ago he said this, but we were having a conversation, and we've talked about it a few times over the months. But you're saying while developing this project, they were looking for a way to make Elwood live as long as possible. That was the best way to tell his story, to emphasize the fact that he did live rather than focus on how his life ended. Which I hope I'm not just spoiling stuff here, but the intention was to have Elwood live as long as possible. So for me, my job was to live, to get in front of the camera and find a way to live that life, to bring that young man to life. And that means being fully present, even though, yeah, I am talking to a camera and I know that Brandon's there, and there is a bunch of, the in hindsight, yeah, really absurd, like Anjanou was talking about. The best way to honor these boys, to honor Elwood, to honor Turner is to really truly try and live in front of that camera and in those scenes.
Brandon, how about yourself?
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of silence in my head. I think it's funny because at the beginning, it definitely wasn't any conscious aspect of my motivation to want to help tell a heavy story, or I didn't put there wasn't much. I wasn't overly aware or paying attention to the importance of this story, or the history of it. I did limited research, so I was aware of it, but at the beginning I just wanted to make a movie. I was like, this is a beautiful script. I watched Hale County this evening, and I knew it was going to be a beautiful experience. It's not until, and it's interesting, even while we were making it, some of the crew members would come up and they'd be like, oh, this is such an important film you're making. And for whatever reason, I think Ethan sharing, well, one, there was just so much joy on set, and there was so much freedom to explore this. We were making a movie and we were making a film. And I also just I never really grabbed on to any of that. I heard it and I welcomed it, but it wasn't anything that I put much weight on. And it's not until I think us doing this press and talking about it more that, yeah, I am recognizing just how important the story is, and the beauty of the way that Ramel shot it, and how, telling it in this way. I mean, there's something about the way Ramel speaks on even the casting process, and this idea of not wanting to make these boys just these kind of like historical caricatures, make these people kind of just like figments of the past, but give them full lives, because these people felt all of the same feelings that we are currently feeling today. So to approach it in that way is such a gift, to just be able to bring your full self, knowing and also erasing that gap or bridging that gap, whatever the words are, that make people feel so separate from these times, to recognize that these are all real people and that we're still sharing the same feelings that these people experience. We're just now getting to, I'm rambling and losing my words, but
we're with you. I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, but I also don't want to cut you off if you want.
Oh no, I cut me off. It's all good.
Okay. Well, I think there's something about hearing the way that all of you have spoken about it just now. I think this is the type of film where I am so excited to hear the way people talk about it in 5 years and 10 years, and just to hear the way that it ages and appreciates in time, because there's just so much to unpack in this film, and there's so much that's special about it. And I want to ask you guys a million more questions, but I think, we started this conversation with, I think Hamish and Luke talking about the people they've shared it with in their lives. And so I would love to know, Anjanou, Brandon, Ethan, if there's one particular person you've been able to share it with in your life who you were really just excited or nervous to hear or see their reaction to the film.
I've shown it to quite a lot of my loved ones, and that was the biggest thing for me, like my family. I didn't know how to explain to them, like, hey, so the movie's like in POV. Like I didn't know what their reaction to that was going to be, but I think that they really trusted that I was really excited to be a part of the project, and that it meant a lot to me. So
I'm just laughing because like Hamish became the most casual Bond villain in the last 10 minutes of this.
He brought the dog. Yeah. Yeah.
Not even noticed that.
Yeah. But I was able to share it with my parents, one of my younger sisters. My other younger sister is gonna watch it for the first time today, and I'm really excited. I was showing it to friends, and they've all had really wonderful things to say and to share. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Amazing.
Happy
Brandon.
premiere day, Ethan and Brandon and Hamish, and happy premiere day, y'all. Come on, somebody.
I think to bounce off of that, it's funny. My mom has seen it, but I don't know. We haven't really talked about it, which is just kind of, I didn't expect us to. She watches different. I don't know. We haven't talked about it. I've heard her on the phone speaking to other people about it though, so I'm like, cool, that's nice. But I think in my own personal experience and like the people I've gotten to speak to about it, I think being able to share it with Ethan and Anjanou. I mean, Anjanou hasn't seen it all the way yet, but being able to share space afterwards and speak on it, and I don't know, like I know like the recognition of what it is growing in my head, and I'm learning more and more about it. So I think that's. And after we saw it in Telluride, me and Ethan were sitting next to each other, and like it was so quiet in there, and like, and he just turned, and then we just like hugged for like a minute, and it was nice. And then we got up and did a Q&A at midnight. First Q&A, the first of what has 300 of them.
It was crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy.
That's really beautiful. But I love too that it was like, to share it with each other was really special. Anjanou, how about yourself? And you haven't seen the film all the way, actually? Brendan also said.
No, I haven't seen the film all the way. Yeah, but that's all right. I did it. So.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all that matters.
But yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted. So who is
you didn't interrupt. I didn't say anything.
I know. I was like, I just had to ask. I was like, wait, he hasn't seen the film, bookmark. But okay, yes. So who's that person for you?
Yeah, I haven't shared it with anybody. Oh. I haven't shared it with anybody, and that's intentional. Because I don't want to know what anybody thinks. I don't want to know. I have not invited a family member or a friend to anything because I don't want to know what anybody thinks. They can watch it on their own, you know. But I'm not bringing them in this space because I care too much about it. And I don't want to leave myself open to other people's opinions because I gotta, they gonna tell me and I don't hear it. I don't want to hear it, you know? I don't want this to be a product of anything other than my own experience right now. So yeah, I want to protect it. I want it to be mine.
I love that. That is a beautiful sentiment. That's a really powerful sentiment as well. But wow, I could ask you all so many more questions, but we will leave it at that for now. I want to thank you all so much for being here and for joining the Backstage audience. Thank you all so much.
Oh, I want to say Hamish was actually dealing with a real alligator.
Yeah, in the script, there's an alligator out in the hallway, but I guess Ramel got there earlier with the gator wrangler and was like, how close can we actually get the gator to real people? And the wrangler was like, we can get him pretty close. And so then he put the gator inside the classroom and had all the kids standing on the desk. And I showed up at work and he was like, so Hamish, the gator's going to be in the room. The kids will be fine. They'll be on the desks. But you're going to be not on a desk. And you just give this monologue, something like the one you're going to give tomorrow, which you probably haven't properly learned yet. So something like that. But you're standing there and the gator, it's got this thin bit of twine around its neck that the wrangler, we can get rid of that with CG later. But, and so I improvised and tried to not be scared of the gator because I wasn't supposed to see the gator. And I realized later that I'd improvised something from another job I had done a while ago. Like I used a lot of material from another limited series. And then I had to be like, you can't use that. But it was fine, but it was very scary because, a gator they're very tired and they keep them, they warm them up so they're very tired. And then all of a sudden they go, shh, it's okay. And you get really scared. But, sort of like working with Pacino. Yeah, it was great. But I mean, that's what every day was like. You never knew what it was like. You're making the most impossible movie. And yet, you know how there's that horrible phrase, like when you do a bad job, when you're on a bad job, they often say a fish stinks from the head down. But this is like an experience where a unicorn flies from the horn up. And Ramel was our horn, and it was just like everyday magic, because he made these experiences. I mean, I'm never going to have an acting experience like that again, where I get to, improvise a monologue in front of a man-eater, a literal man-eater.
I can't believe you did that.
That should be.
Thank you, Anjana, for taking that up. Appreciate it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was so curious about that, but I was like, oh, I've already taken up too much time. But thank you so much for indulging us with that story.
Sure.
That's actually the perfect note to end it on. So thank you all so much.